Hey there, it's Shauna. I hope you're doing great. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for October 2nd. So this week I'm calling the return to the wild feminine because this week there's a lot of aspects with Venus going on. So, and not just Venus, which is feminine energy, but like there's this fiery kind of vibe happening all week. So it's like wild feminine energy. So I'm excited to share with you the astrology of the week, and then I have 3 tips for you to have an amazing week. So first, what's going on with Venus? Okay, so Venus it's associated with relationships. It's associated with our ability to connect and socialize with others. It's also related to the pleasure principle. So it shows us what we're drawn towards, where we have this allure. And this goes along with sensuality and sexuality too. So when Venus makes aspects, those kinds of things come up, anything relationship, sex, etc. So Venus is making aspects with Pluto, Mars, and Saturn this week. Holy moly. So Pluto is all about the death and rebirth process. Pluto brings transformation. It's like the phoenix that is rising from the ashes. Something falls away, but then something else that is like new life is brought up. So what this typically looks like in real life, like in not in real life, but like in practical terms, is that Pluto reflects when unconscious material wants to come up, when it's like there's some kind of behavior pattern or thought process that you weren't aware of about yourself before, maybe something that you do or something that you feel that comes up to the surface. It was unconscious and then it becomes conscious. So this may involve relationships, this may involve sexuality, anything like that. It is a harmonious aspect, so I don't think that it will be necessarily like super intense, but it's something to watch for, especially earlier in the week. And Pluto aspects bring a lot of strength too, so there's a lot of capacity for like really strong and empowering energy coming through as well. Then midweek, Venus will conjunct Mars, and so it's really interesting because Venus and Mars are like yin and yang. So Venus is the pleasure principle, and then Mars is all about action and assertiveness. It's like that warrior energy. And Mars also draws boundaries. So whereas Venus is all about connection and socializing, Mars likes to draw the line. And so there may be this like balance between like how do you go after what you want, how do you draw boundaries with others if that's something that you've been working on, and how do you balance independence with human connection. And then later in the week, Venus makes an aspect with Saturn. And so this brings us down to Earth. This brings us down to a reality check of sorts. Saturn is about practical things. It's about creating limitations so that we can create what it is that we want in our lives and in the practical world. And Saturn also asks us to commit or to recommit to something. So I feel like earlier in the week there may be a lot of feelings that come up, and like this like intense, like where there's like the wild feminine, and it feels more like raw, so to speak. And then towards the end of the week is when we feel more grounded and more practical and more like, okay, this is what I want to do with what it is that came up earlier in the week. So this is really interesting too, because all of this is happening when there's a full moon in the middle of the week, which heightens all of our emotional senses. So this full moon is in the sign of Aries, and it's happening Thursday or Friday, depending on where you are in the world. It's at 12 degrees of Aries, and it's happening on Thursday, October 5th at 11:40 a.m. Pacific time. That's 6:40 p.m. Universal time. And then if you're in Australia, it's going to be on Friday, October 6th at 4:40 a.m. Australian Eastern time. And so Aries is all about a healthy sense of ego. It's about asserting yourself and having the courage to do so, and having like building a healthy sense of ego. So there may be like a lot of intense feelings and emotions, especially involving relationships, because a full moon is really, it's a polarity, because we have the sun in Libra and then we have the moon in Aries. They're opposite signs. And this is happening when Venus and Mars are conjunct. So that's really interesting. We have like this feminine masculine, or yin and yang, you know, however you want to look at it. It's like this week is really asking us to look at how it is that we have our own sense of independence, our own identity, and strength within that, conviction within ourselves, and then how do we also stay connected to others and relate to others and not compromise our identity while still feeling very connected. So all of those things might come up, especially earlier in the week, and the full moon, it can bring up a lot of intense emotions. So I would say, like, especially Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, make sure that you give yourself the extra self-care that you need, so that when you do feel some more intense emotions, that you can have the space to process those and know that it will pass. I find that most people that I've talked to say that on the actual day of the full moon, they feel like a sense of ease. Like, it feels like there's like this build up to it emotionally. So I don't know, you let me know if you feel different than that, but I would just like give yourself some extra space and free time, especially like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then also this week, towards the end of the week, Mercury will conjunct the sun. And so Mercury is our conscious mind. The sun is our energy, what we're focused on at the moment, you know, within this whole entire year, within this cycle. The moon is, or the sun is in the sign of Libra. So it's another relationship kind of focus. So this later in the week is more where our conscious mind brings us some clarity on what it is that we're focused on with relationships. And so I feel like earlier in the week is when some of the intense emotions or unconscious things will come up, you know, like really feeling this heat around what it is that we want, what it is that we want to go towards, how we're going to connect with people. And then at the end of the week, it's more about having like a more practical focus on how to do that, or what to do with these things that have come up for us earlier in the week. So all of that being said, I know that's a lot. I have some tips for you to really use this energy for this week. So tip number 1 is to write down your guilty pleasures. I actually want you to write down 10 of your guilty pleasures. And so humor me here, okay? Write down as many as you can. I know 10 might be hard for some people, but I say 10 because I really want you to push yourself. Like, what is it that you really enjoy? And especially things that may seem a little bit silly, like things that you might not normally tell people. Like if there's a really silly show that you like, or listening to certain music or something like that, that, you know, like doesn't sound cool, but you still enjoy it. I want you to write those things down. And then tip number 2, I want you to do one of those things, or maybe a few of them. So give yourself that treat. Do a guilty pleasure for yourself. So disclosure, you know, don't do anything that's self-destructive, of course, but like do something that really brings you a sense of pleasure, that brings you a sense of, especially like, because Venus is in an earth sign, it's in the sign of Virgo, it can be really nice to give yourself some kind of sensual pleasure this week as well. So I'll leave that up to you. And then before I give you the last tip, I want to read you a quote. This is from one of my favorite books that I've been rereading. It's The Women Who Run with Wolves. It's by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And it's fucking amazing. I love this book so much. So it's Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype. And in this section, she's talking about the retrieval of intuition. When we are connected to the instinctual self, to the soul of the feminine, which is natural and wild, then instead of looking over whatever happens to be on display, we say to ourselves, what am I hungry for? Without looking at anything outwardly, we venture inward and ask, what do I long for? What do I wish for now? Alternate phrases are, what do I crave? What do I desire? What do I yearn? And the answer usually arrives rapidly. Oh, I think I want, or you know, it would be really great, is something, or that, or ah, yes, or that's what I really want. And so she talks more in this section about how we're so presented with all of these very alluring things in our culture. It's like a smorgasbord. Our dating apps are kind of like the modern representation of this, where it's like we're just presented all the time with stimulus. We're presented with things to choose from, whether it's in the grocery store, on apps, or shopping online, or what to order at the restaurant. We're presented with all of these things. And so through this, we've been trained to select from what is in front of us. And what she's saying here is that it's actually the way to really get in touch with what it is that you truly desire, and to get in touch with your intuition and your soul, is to go inside and ask what it is that you want. And so this doesn't mean that we can't get inspiration from the outside and we can't view things with beauty, but in this section she's really emphasizing that going inside first, and to start there. Because there may be options that are not right in front of you that are available somewhere else outside of your line of vision. And I like this quote because I think it speaks to especially starting off the week with that Venus and Pluto together, and the Venus and Mars. And so it's like, okay, before we just choose from what's presented, what is it that we really want at a deep heart level? So I want you to put this into practice. Leave me a comment below and let me know, like, what does that look like for you? What is it that you are going to focus on this week that you really want, that you really desire? Or how will you get in touch with that? What does it look like for you to get in touch with your wild woman archetype? So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please share it with a friend. I love to get these messages out to as many people as possible. And then there is a lot going on this week, so if you want to go deeper into some of this astrology, you can listen to the podcast that I co-host with my friend Mel of Energetic Principles. And it's really cool actually, because for this episode this week, it's our 20th episode, yay! And we interwove all of the quotes, and the theme of this podcast is based on this book, The Women Who Run with Wolves. So it's really cool. And another fun thing related to the podcast is that Mel and I will be hosting a Facebook Live event. It's going to be actually on Thursday on the full moon. So we'll share a little bit about us. We'll interview each other so that you can learn more about us and how we got into astrology. And then we'll have a live Q&A for you to ask us questions as well. So that is Thursday, October 5th. It's going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So you can find that on our Facebook page. I'll have a link below to it for the Feminine Principle podcast. And then, if you want to get a reading, if you want to make this more personal for yourself, I can help you with that as well. The best way to inquire about that right now is to send me an email for pricing. So I'm wishing you an amazing week and sending lots of love. And I'll talk to you next week. Namaste.